Civ 7 could suck. Or it might not. Who knows? No, I have not been sponsored to say that. I have not been invited to any exclusive event. I have not played Civ 7 in an early access preview. I haven't spoken to the devs, and they haven't sent me any direct communication about Civ 7 at all. People have been accusing me of things, so I thought I would clarify. However, there is this weird cycle of hate that the Civilization series of video games faces, encapsulated reductively but humorously by this image, first posted on Reddit about 8 years ago. This meme is funny, and what's funnier is that because of my extensive coverage of Civ 6, my professional life is now a constant of deja vu. Seriously, it's the exact same comments I received for Civ 6 again, but for Civ 7. But there are a lot of counters and dismissals of this graphic, and other things I've said, and how it usually goes is someone throws out a rebuttal or an accusation, I point out how what they're saying doesn't quite work, and then they never reply again. To make things easier, I'm going to reply to a bunch of these comments here in this video, and I'll try to be extensive, but I'm sure some of you are going to think of some more niche points of views, to which I'll explain more thoroughly in a reply to you, and then I expect you'll never read or reply to me again. This other cycle of accusation based on misunderstanding, me explaining, and the accuser running away is exactly why in my earlier video I said people don't listen to what I actually say, they just hear what they want to hear. I've been accused of blatantly untrue things, some just guess things have happened which never did, and there are many who hear me say something and think I mean something completely different, and then come for me for something I never said. Of course, when I point that out, the people accusing me just stop replying and never come back. And it happens again and again and again. This video is an attempt to be a catch-all for both of these cycles, the main cycle around Civilization games and a little bit about what I have to deal with, so hopefully we can move on to other things. Now, this meme and the responses I've seen to it. It's because with time there are patches. Any new Civ is trash because it lacks the DLCs that will be re-released over the next few years. Now, this is understandable, but not what I'm talking about or what this meme is about. This is about people who complain about fundamentals of the game being broken, and say no matter how many DLCs or expansions the game gets, it will always be bad because of the fundamental change. Civ 4 will always be bad because of the limitations on expanding your empire and overcomplication. Civ 5 will always be bad because of unstacked units and hex grids. Civ 6 will always be bad because unstacked cities are fundamentally bad. There's no version that is good. The claim now is that Civ 7 will always be bad because of the ages and the Civ changing, and like every Civ game, it will fail so hard that it will be the last Civ ever. I'm talking about the mass of people who say the games are fundamentally broken and doomed to fail no matter what happens after release. These people aren't talking about bugs or balance or missing content, they 100% believe the game is unredeemable. Of course, Civ games are better after 2 years and 2 expansions. I keep telling people that because that's what it's been like since Civ 4. But that's not the point of the graphic, and not the people we're talking about. What this meme doesn't get is how they shuffle out fans between cycles. So the funny thing about this meme is whether it's the same old people or new, they say the exact same thing time and time again. If it's the same people, they should know better. If it's different, newer people, that's even weirder. Are people really all that similar? Completely different people who jumped into the Civ series at completely different points and say the exact same complaint every time? It's strange, no? Of course, there isn't a 100% transfer rate of players from one Civ to the next, but it's undisputed that the number of fans for each game grows massively. Civ 5 sold millions more than Civ 4, and Civ 6 sold millions more than Civ 5. And before you jump on the sales doesn't equals players, Civ 6 has way more players than Civ 5 on Steam. It's true, there are those who went back to Civ 5 or stick to Civ 4, but we can see the numbers. Civ 6 on a normal day has more players than Civ 5 ever had. We can see 1,000 to 2,000 concurrent players on Steam for both Civ 3 and 4 today, 10,000 to 20,000 concurrent still on Civ 5. But Civ 6 is floating between 50,000 to 80,000 concurrent players. Some sticking to the older Civ games doesn't mean the new ones suck or are unpopular. It's just not your cup of tea. Not even counting the fact that Civ 6 has tons of console players, which Civ 1 to 5 has zero, because they never released on consoles. So although it might feel like Civ 6 is a failure when you personally don't enjoy it and have gone back to Civ 5, the number of new players Civ 6 gained is massive compared to those who stayed behind. And remember, the same happened with Civ 4 to 5 and 3 to 4. It's part of the cycle that a minority stays behind. This meme never makes sense. It hinges on accusing everyone else of contradictory opinions, but also lumps everyone into one group, then pretends to be surprised that they don't have a consensus. This isn't about the Civ community not having a consensus. Of course, not everyone thinks the same thing, so you'll see comments saying everything. But this is about the strange people that have this severe hatred for a new Civ game at all. To clarify, severe hatred. Not disliking a new mechanic or thinking the art style is ugly, but a deep, almost vindictive and persevering disdain of the new game, where they spend countless hours going to every video and post they can find on it to push every negative thing they can think of, accusing anyone who has anything positive to say at all as being paid shills or casual brainwashed fake gamers or mindless consumers. I've seen many of them. They hate on my videos, and I see them posting the same hate on other Civ channel videos. I see them again and again on channel, spending their days hating, not even getting their facts right, just hating. This meme is about addressing the point that this group is so loud that it's almost impossible to miss their presence. Even if they're a minority, their hatred floods comment sections, subreddits, Steam discussions, and forums, and it creates false perceptions like Civ 6 is unpopular, or most people hate Civ 6. And this meme is making fun of that group to discredit and dismiss the unreasonableness. To combine this comment with the previous one about fans being shuffled out between cycles, if it's new fans, why are they complaining about the next game not being Civ anymore if they haven't played the older ones? We saw this when the Civ social account posted images of Civ 4 leaders and people started jumping on them because they thought it was a reveal of Civ 7 leaders. People complaining how Civ is ruined when they don't even recognize Civ 4 leaders. And of course, old fans should know better by now. So which type of Civ fan makes it sensible to be part of this deep hate cycle? The type who has only played 5 and 6, or the type who has played since 1 and 2? Because Type A doesn't know what Civ is as a series, and Type B should know better by now. So this meme is actually making fun of neither. It's making fun of Type C, the unreasonably hateful people spouting vitriol at every new Civ game despite having played the older games or not. This cycle is a cycle because the hate is exactly the same regardless of whether they are old or new fans, because the hate isn't coming from a place of reason, it's hate for hate's sake. Now, I know exactly what you're going to say next. But what about actual legitimate criticism? I guess that's not allowed anymore. I hate this meme because it basically just ignores all the actual criticisms of the games and boils it down to everyone thinks new thing bad. This meme doesn't dismiss actual criticism. Read what it says. Disappointing, watered down, broken, hardly anything can top the latest entry in a series, fancy graphics cannot substitute gameplay, but it's ugly anyway. This is a generic representation of the hate in the Civ hate cycle, and it's not legitimate criticism. This isn't about the reasonable of you who are concerned that there might be bugs, or missing content on launch, or too much DLC and microtransactions, or that the 2K launcher sucks. This is about the actual hatred in the true sense of the word hate. If you're criticizing bad balance, bad AI, glitches, and exploits, that's not what I'm talking about and not what the meme is making fun of. It's about the wave of comments like, "This latest art choice looks like raw sewage. All the modern stuff is cartoony. Civ 5 is woke. The game made for babies. They made it for women and 12-year-olds." These are all real comments, by the way. This is the hate that's being referenced in this hate cycle. And I don't think the reasonable of you are saying that your criticism belongs in the same pile as this kind of stuff. And this flood of hate creates a false perception on how good or bad a new Civ game is, and it misleads people on their expectations. But isn't Civ 6 just like, not very good? I don't really think this post makes sense because Civ 6 is still quite a divisive game. All these new ideas are dumb. Whoever is making decisions at Firaxis should be fired. This is actually a big problem. The hate for Civ 6 is so loud, it's misleading people on not just how loved it is, it's tricking people into thinking that Firaxis will undo what they did with Civ 6 because it was supposedly so hated. Civ 4 with DLC overtook Civ 3 in every way. Then Civ 5 with DLC overtook Civ 4 in every way, and now Civ 6 with DLC has overtaken Civ 5 in every way. Civ 6 is by far the most bought, most played, and most reviewed Civ game ever. Like, it's not even close. Civ 6 literally has twice as many Steam reviews as Civ 5, not counting console players, and in the last month, 3,000 Steam user reviews were left for Civ 6, and they're 90% positive. Civ 6 is a success by every reasonable definition. This is not me defending Civ 6, this is me warning you. Anytime I mention actual real statistics, people accuse me of defending Civ 6. Why would I need to defend Civ 6 when it's already the most successful one? Again, people don't listen to what I actually say, they just hear what they want to hear. I am not saying Civ 6 is the best Civ game, it's just simply the most successful. So from this, it's important to conclude what matters to you. If you dislike every Civ game more than the last since Civ 4, meanwhile, Civ is only getting more successful with each game by wide margins, this means Firaxis will keep going in the direction that you don't like. And it's likely you won't enjoy a new Civ game ever again for the foreseeable future. By all metrics that matter to the business, Civ 5 is 100% more successful than Civ 4, and Civ 6 is 50% more successful than Civ 5. Civ 7 will continue going in this direction away from what you like, because what you like is now 3 times less successful than what Firaxis has been doing. But all this hate for Civ 6 is making this perception that they're gonna undo Civ 6 and go back to Civ 5 or go back to Civ 4, and then people pre-order Civ 7 and get disappointed. See, that's a bit of a problem. And you can feel that this is wrong or disagree or whatever, but I'm warning you, Civ will continue to move away from what you personally like because it keeps working even better than what was done before. So, don't pre-order. Why people pre-order then complain about the game still is beyond me. If game bad, why did you buy it? This isn't the 90s where a game was a mystery and you're clickbaited by some awesome cover art. You can see exactly what a game is before buying now. User reviews, official reviews, Metacritic, random YouTuber. And if you didn't buy it, play something else. Play the existing Civ games that you still like. You don't lose anything with a new Civ game that you don't like. If anything, the older Civ games get even cheaper, so you can finally convince your friends to jump in or buy the game for them. And this brings us to, we simply lower our expectations over time. Of course, this is what people always say. I make upcoming games list videos and have done for 10 years. People always say, gaming was better 10 years ago, and now I've been a creator for over a decade, It's funny seeing people say 10 years ago was great, when 10 years ago they were saying 10 years ago was great. And this creates the sense that expectations and standards are lowering as time goes on. But another thing I do regularly is jump back and play old games. Do you know how many 90s games were broken, buggy messes, rushed out by publishers, forcing tight deadlines and split up into expansions to sell separately so they can sell you the same game twice or 3 times? People always forget that StarCraft and its expansion, Brood War, both released in the same year, just 8 months apart. And then people say an expansion back then was better than entire games today. And that's just you forgetting all the bad games. E.T., Shaq Fu, Trespasser, which was labeled the worst game of 1998 because it was unoptimized, broken, and just weird to play. When did everyone forget these? Shaq Fu was the poster child of bad, overhyped game, and it was a go-to reference for buyer beware in the gaming industry since 1994. But at some point, everyone forgot about these bad games and suddenly everything was great in the 90s? When did that happen? We have more good games today than we had games total in the 90s. So actually, I don't think expectations have been lowered. Standards might actually be too high for some people. Whenever someone says, all new games suck, I always ask, so what games do you like? And so many times I get the reply, that's the thing. I don't think I like any games anymore. We hear gaming is dying, but really, we are dying. We're getting old and the pattern that has always been there is becoming clear. People say nothing is original anymore, they're all copies. But your old favorite games, yeah, they're copies too. We liked so much because it felt new, but it only felt new because we didn't know what came before. Wolfenstein 3D was a reskin of a refinement of an iteration of a copy, and we were happy with it. I recently found out that even Pong was a stolen clone and got sued for stealing. The very symbol of video games starting to become mainstream, Pong, was a ripoff. Games release broken and unfinished today? Yeah, they did back then too. Today, we want it all day one. Whereas back then, we put up with so much because there wasn't anything better. So no, I don't think expectations have been lowered. If anything, they're impossibly high. Every Civ release needs 2 years and 2 expansions before it's considered good. Just buy it then at a discount. Civ 7 is a major departure from all other versions of Civ. This graphic is hardly applicable. It's laughable, quite frankly. Do you genuinely believe that this is the first Civ game where people said and thought that exact thing? It was said about Civ 2, Civ 3, Civ 4, Civ 5, and 6. Some quick quotes I could find from the past. No longer civilization, more like Sim City, about Civ 6. Civ 5 is too different from Civ 4. This will change my gameplay too much. I don't feel that I'm really excited about this. About Civ 4. Every single Civ game gets accused of being too different from the one before it. Adding borders and workers was a fundamental departure. Adding religion and culture was a fundamental departure. Today you might think of those changes and additions as normal and sensible, but that's not how it was taken at the time. And then people always say, oh, well, if you think this change is the same as all the other big changes, then I have a bridge to sell you. Well, that's what they said about the changes before as well. When they went from squares to hexagons, do you remember the hate and freakouts about that? That it was a fundamental departure, that it's not even Civ anymore because they're going to hexagons. And back then people were saying, well, we added borders and workers and culture and all of that, and those were all fundamental changes. And people said, well, if you think changing to hexagons is the same as those changes, I have a bridge to sell you. And this look back really brings me to my next response to this hate cycle meme. It's a nice meme, but to be fair, Civ 4 at launch was a massive improvement over 3 in terms of decision making, content, and overall strategy and replayability, even without the add-ons. So Civ 4 is a favorite. Of course, we all know that. So people always bring it up and how it was universally loved, but it wasn't. I'll let other people explain how it was the exact same thing for Civ 4. Some quotes on who hated Civ 4 on launch. I was there, and I remember at launch people were unhappy about the changeover in economy management style, because in previous games, each additional city was just a net positive for your civilization, even if corruption and waste meant that it was producing like 1 production and commerce per turn. That's still more than nothing. But Civ 4, in order to kill infinite city sprawl, changed the economic model radically, and people were big mad because that's how it has been for 3 games. Again, another quote on who hated Civ 4 at launch. Me, and I still will. It had a lot of cool ideas, sure, but they were horribly implemented and the entire thing was a mess. Too many unit promotions, too many unit mechanics that were incredibly obtuse, example, what impact did first strikes have on strength, damage in combat, etc. Religion was terribly implemented, stacks were a mess, civics didn't work terribly well, great people were implemented in a mediocre fashion. Espionage was beyond annoying when the AI started using it. Too many tile improvement choices. Just too much of too much. Looking back to the past, you can still find remnants of the hate Civ 4 got, despite the loss of many forums and websites over time. In another thread, you have a poster claiming that the inability to carry hammers over from one project to another and the increased difficulty of expansion is simply proof that Firaxis has placed graphics over gameplay. This was posted in 2005. As you can see, the beloved Civ 4 was getting the exact same hate every other Civ game got, building up to its release and through its early days. It was not different or better for Civ 4. And then we reach this kind of comment. 4 was always good, 5 was amazing after DLC, and 6 was always disappointing. Please stop with this revisionist crap. Typically, once many or all of these points are made, someone comes along with the accusation that we're trying to rewrite history, because how things actually were don't line up with what some people remember, and we must be lying. For some, it's just impossible to comprehend that other people think differently. I never say Civ 6 is the best, and I never say Civ 6 is the worst. These are subjective opinions. I point out how it's the most played, with thousands of user reviews at 90% positive, which are just stats, and suddenly I'm being defensive and being a revisionist. 4 was not always universally loved. 6 was not always disappointing. And I think that's pretty clear to anyone who looks into things properly, so at that point, the only way to continue with the nonsensical hate is to claim that all the data to be fake and all the people disagreeing to be liars. And once we reach here, there's usually no convincing those stuck in the hate cycle, but if there was any convincing, they wouldn't be in the hate cycle. Going from video to video, thread to thread, calling people liars, shills, and fake. I've now been ranting for a while now, and covered a lot of things. I don't know if you found this interesting or useful, or you have another point that I didn't cover, but I like talking about video games and people keep saying things at me. My only request is that if you say something in response to me, reply to my reply. I'll reply to you, just reply back to me. We can have a conversation. Unless you're just trying to gotcha me and you're not trying to talk about video games, but instead looking to spread hate for hate's sake? No, of course you're not, right? Which is why you'll reply, right?